I'm gonna go ahead and record this and post it on the website later on. On the screen. Oh, yeah. I'm gonna go ahead and share my screen. We'll get started. There it is. Right. So today we're discussing our all-time favorite calendar year end. So we'll just go ahead and jump in. About the first 4 to 5 minutes will be USAS, and then Tanya's gonna grab the podium and do the payroll side. So welcome everybody. And Tanya has brought some Christmas crackle with her, so that everybody, if you're
need a sugar fix,
there you go. It's right there. She'll try and get you with your baseball mitt there and grab some chocolate nourishment. All right. So one of the first things, there is a configuration setting in USAS. It's under System, Configuration, Vendor Tax ID Number Configuration. And so that's going to be right here in your system configuration. And then it's this one, Vendor Tax ID. And then there's some drop downs there that you can choose. This only works for like the new vendors that you're setting up. And it has right down here. There's a few options there. So there's no warning, require for all vendors, require for 1099 vendors, warn for all vendors, and warn for 1099 vendors. I went ahead and I set that up for just warning for the 1099 vendors, and I'm saving that. And so then when you go and maybe you put in a new vendor and it doesn't have like the tax ID set up, then you're gonna get these warnings here. An error that the tax ID must be set up if a tax ID type is set up, and for a 1099 vendor, the tax ID hasn't been entered. So that's nice and handy to have. So you can just kind of attack it before it, you get to December. So just kind of hey, this might be nice to set up on your system. If you need any help with that, of course, let us know.
Can you repeat how you get to that? Can you repeat how you get to that?
Yes, it is. We're going to go back to home. Okay. System, configuration, and then all the way down, because everything's alphabetical, vendor tax ID number configuration. So system, and then you do the configuration all the way down here at the bottom. And then you've got like 5 different choices that you can make. So if you don't want it to alert everybody, you can just do, if they're a 1099 vendor, then it'll just warn if you don't have a tax ID for that. So it's a nice little setting. All right. So the next thing we're going to do, and this is a good December thing to do, is to analyze our vendors if they are a 1099 vendor or not. So there's 3 ways that you can do it. And of course, my favorite is the last one. So we'll go through the others first. You can use the grid, and we've got right here where you've got your types. Type 1099, you have to do the drop down with a caret. Under 1099, select the type 1099. And under that, there's an additional drop down, the tax ID type and the ID number. And then for amounts, which is on the same level as the 1099, you want to do your year-to-date taxable total. And you can filter your grid and do all that. That's one way of doing it. So go core vendors, use your more button. And so you see I've got these all clicked on here and set up the way that I like it, as we've got for the example. So you can do this, and then, like your taxable total, you could do the greater than 600. another thing might be active or whatever. So right now, one of the issues is that there's too much on the screen for filtering. And so that's another thing. Another way to do it is the filtering. So you could do like non-1099 with a greater than or equal. So with that, get your non-1099 and then do that. And then you don't have too much on the screen. So the more you filter, the less likely you are to get that wonderful little error that we all know and do not love. So this will just tell you, and then you can you click at your top, you can sort them by their type there, and you can easily see, oh, I've got some work to do here. I've got some that are going to pull into my report and I don't have their tax type or their ID. I'm going to need to mail out Washington signs and some others getting that information. So I have that when it's time to do 1099s. So that's one way to do it, is the grid. Okay. And then another way to do it is the 1099 report. So you can use your report here, report manager. And then I always like to use my tags. I can just pop in 1099 and get that right there. Another way is to use the report name. You do a percent for your wild card, and then 1099, another one, and then you can do that. You can arrow over. There's some filters set right here. And then here's your report. You can arrow over and do, so your year-to-date taxable, say you want 600 there, and then, can generate that report. You can also redo that. So royalties is 10, and then you can just put like royalty payments. Royalty. And that will generate that, and that'll do that report. So here's your 1090 report. Okay, so that you can look in there and you can see, oh, again, I've got some work to do. I need to find out these from Washington Signs and some others to get this all populated so I have this ready to go for the calendar year end. Okay. So another way, this system is a demo system and it's not set for the latest release. On the latest release, there was an issue. One of our districts reported it, and they're working on getting it on the very next release. So if you use the periodic 1099 extract for your report, it's not going to work at this moment. So you can use that. That's not working right at this moment. The next release we get, that's going to work. So you can use either the grid option, you can use the 1099 report off of the report manager, and then you can also go in the vendors and use the advanced query. And this isn't the first time you've heard this, but if you've saved it from last year, you can set up your advanced queries with your type 1099, non-1099, and your taxable 600 or greater. You can use that. You can apply that query. And then, again, we're getting our same results there. And then you can just go ahead and print a report off of that. So I have these advanced queries set up for 1099 vendors. I have them set up for non-1099 vendors. So you might want to run through and do some analysis and see what we have there. And royalties with 10. So apply that. And there we got a couple right there that are royalty payments that are over 10. So we also have a, that's in the word here. I pulled some information together using the IRS website. So this is strictly from the IRS, just cut and paste straight from their website. And then I've got a little bit down below for HCC. And it's basically, you always get this question every year, whether you're new to the position or not, you kind of have to go back over. It's like, who gets a 1099 and who doesn't? So we've got some information here. Who gets an NEC and who gets an MISC? So, well, I know one of the questions we had was, is it services only or is it parts and materials? So here, and of course this is from IRS again, it is services by someone who is not in your employ, and it includes the parts and the materials. And then, of course, the attorneys, this LLP, liability partnership. And then there's the exception with a single member LLC partnership. The MISC, our big thing is royalties. When your school's holding that school musical and maybe they're using some musical scores, that's kind of the one we see the most for the MISC for those royalties. And again, gross proceeds paid to an attorney in a settlement agreement, but the services are on the NEC. Okay, everything else not always applicable. And then we get to the bottom of our HCC notes. That unfortunately the deceased employee, so it's sad when this happens, but we have to set up that estate vendor. So they're going to get reported in box 3. And when you set up that estate vendor, you have to do an adjustment on the vendor. And I've got an example.
We don't have these pages in your.
Oh, we don't have these.
No, this is the additional one that I'm going to send later.
Okay.
It's okay.
Okay.
It's not you, it's me. So I'm going to look up my estate here. Okay, estate of John Smith. So I set up my vendor for the estate of John Smith. We're assuming John Smith passed away. And with this, you want to check this ignore limits so that it captures it, even though in our example here, it was only $500. Normally, this would not be captured. The type is the other income and SSN, that whatever his SSN was. So that captures it. Whatever the amount is for an estate vendor, that will need to be printed. So, and then again on the bottom, make sure the name, the state of, right there. Okay. So that is that. No, so the adjustment, that's another thing that you might need to do adjustments. There's certain circumstances in that. And again, on this one, it has to be a view to do an adjustment. And so on this one, I did an example. We'll just throw that in there. Of course, our test system is set back in 2021. And then a payment to estate. And so my example was 500. Make sure that you mark the taxable right there. And then you post that. I've already done that right there. And then it had a value. I had to adjust the system just to do the example. So then you'll see your year-to-date total. And the 500 and your taxable total, 500. And that will print out, with the other income setting, that'll print out for you. At your year end. So, another thing I want to punctuate, employees should never, and I love it, never, you never, they say you never use never and you never use always. So employees should never be issued a 1099 in addition to a W-2. The only exception is the deceased employee, and the 1099 would actually be to the estate of the employee.
Or
So-
whoever the estate is under.
Yes, or
Because
whoever the
it may
estate
not be
is
the
under.
estate of the employee.
Right, thanks.
Which is wife or children.
Right, so this is, it's like, it's kind of it's not really, it's to the estate of the employee. Okay. So that's reviewing vendors. Does anybody have any questions? It's good to do this in advance, mail out those, contact the vendors, whichever method you choose, mail, email, whatever. You're making a phone call and get those W-9s in, update your system for the end of the year. People take vacations. Do it early. So, any other questions on that?
Well,
Yeah.
the deceased employee, was that for expenses or was that payroll? That wasn't payroll, was it?
It was payroll, but you have to set it up under the miscellaneous. for
If
the
it ever happens,
estate.
reach out to your attorney and Tanya.
Exactly. Tanya.
Yeah, they're generally paid out of payroll, and then you move the money from payroll to USAS in order to issue them the 1099, because it can't show up on both, and it can't show up on their W-2 because they were deceased. So,
Right.
Last time I had one, we just put to the estate of on their payroll check and sent it. That was.
so you're supposed to do that. That's the first step. The step 2 is reduce their federal wages by that amount and move it over to USAS. We have a whole guide if it ever happens.
That's
She
true.
was thinking
If
revise
it's
the
over
guide.
$5,000,
Yeah,
if it's under $5,000, you can pay it to the employee as you typically would.
Okay.
That's what the.
For attorney. Hey, I like things that come from the attorney.
Right.
That's not me.
Yeah.
And we didn't have to do the thing on back then.
Oh,
It's not. Read that.
that's always a in-depth help desk ticket when that occurs.
So with their expenses, if they had expenses to be paid, would that just be a normal?
Okay, so with the employee, so a payment to an employee through a PO, like mileage, travel, a reimbursement for something, that is not included on the 1099. Again, going back to that never statement, they should never get a 1099 and a W-2. So if the district's reimbursing you for mileage, that is not a 1099. So you're just getting a W-2. And that only exception is for that deceased employee.
Expensive.
It's always, one of those rare things that happens, thank goodness. And it's an involved discussion. So I always like Tanya's tickets where she's like, we discussed this and we've got it straightened out and it's resolved now.
Hey, nobody's got time for that.
Long story short, I see those on the help desk tickets. So, but we're glad to, figure out as much as we can and direct you to your attorneys or, get it all cleared out. Okay. So, this one was running the report. We're, out of the system. That's an example of the report. There. That's odd. Okay, that's good.
I think we just sincerely found it, like.
What is going on here? Don't you love it? Let me see. I'm gonna close this and open this. For some reason, it's kind of blanking out on me. Let's reopen the file. Okay. Okay, that's for the report. And magically, it's larger, which is nice, because that was hard to see. All right, so here's an example of the MISC file that generates for the 1099 report. Again, the advanced query is my favorite way to go for this. But you can use the periodic report, but that will be fixed soon. Here's the vendor adjustment example, which we went through on the screen. And for this year, SSDT changed their wiki into this Atlassian. So I updated all the references and all that for how you do things. So if you're using the old Jira, that won't work anymore. They totally cut that one off, and then they are using this MCOECN Atlassian. We've updated the links on our website as well. Okay, so after you get done with getting the new, the W-9s, updating all those in the system, then you're ready to close out your month. Everybody should know how to close out their month, and going through those procedures. So we'll kind of go through that. Another report that's advised is the SM12's SM2M spending plan summary. That's advised to run at the end of the year. And then calendar year and closing. So one of the things, I talked about this with another treasurer late yesterday, was his BWC payment. So there is a proration utility to proportionately distribute that out with all the salary accounts that came over from your payroll posting through the year. So you need to set up an account filter for workers' comp on there. And so what you would do is you would go through to your utilities, and this is your proration utility. And so you'd use like the period, I'd use the calendar year to date, and then I set up a workers' comp filter. So that's only going to pull in the salaries for that. And then I'm just going to call this workers' comp. And you would call it 2023. The system set back in 2021, and would create that. And then in cell B1, you'd put in, I'm just going to say it's 10,000 here. And then over on the side, it's going to give you your prorated percent. So there's your calendar year to date, and then your prorated percent, and that's your prorated amount. So I'm going to go ahead, and it's filtering only for your salary objects here. So it's taking everything, it's like, I've got X amount of dollars, I'm prorating that to total out to the 10,000. So you can download that and take a look at that. Okay. And so here it is in Excel format. There we go. There's prorated amounts. And, well, there's a total at the bottom, but This is 20,000 because the total of 10,000 is at the bottom. So you can see it's prorated out. Actually, just the 10,000. So with that, the issue is the salaries accounts. They're not BWC amounts. So you'll want to do a create POCSV. I've got a mapping on there for the account mapping. That's for workers' comp. So that is going to change your workers' comp, and we're going to be doing the 261, 262 objects for workers' comp. So that changed it from the salary object to the workers' comp object. Okay, you can even enter your purchase order number and it will add that in there. So I think the other one I used was 1900455. I just looked it up and found out the next one that I could use. There. And my vendor, I'm going to add my vendor. I'm just going to say it's this Baden Insurance. I'm going to make my date in here. So I pulled in, I did the create POCSV. I used the workers' comp account mapping, which changes it to like the 262 object. I added in the purchase order that I wanted it to be, and I selected the vendor that I wanted, and I'm adding the purchase order date that I want. And so with that, you download it. Okay, and this is what I get. It populated the PO number, added the date, added the vendor number. I've got these in like the 261 object code conversion, and I've got the charge amount. So there's my PO. I'm going to go over to my purchase orders. I'm going to import this purchase order. Was purchase order 6.
You have to set up the account mapping first in your system, right?
Yes, you do. You have to set it up. So if you have like a 111 goes here and a 141 goes there, you would need to set up that account mapping. We can help with that if you need help with it. So we're going to load that in. It's going to give you one of those wonderful little files. Records loaded 1, no errors. There we go, no errors right here. Hallelujah. And then we're going to go and look at, it's this one, 1900455. So we can look at that. And see, I'll edit it so it's a little bit better on the screen. Come on. It's got a lot of lines, but I think the limit's like 10,000 lines. So the only thing is because our file had like a lot of decimals, it actually did it to 9989.73. And if you wanted 10,000, then you'd need to adjust that. But just pay attention to that. But it's all in there. You know, it just saves so much work by doing this. If this is what you want to do, it's a huge time saver. Your workers' comp's one of the instances they use for this, but you might want to allocate things out for other instances as well. But it's a really nice tool that they've got. And then the importing of the POs, that's, you know, it's kind of a set file. You can put that in with set columns and everything. Kind of like we do things for payroll, but it's for purchase orders. You can mass load that in. Saves on all the typing. Saves a lot of work. So that's something, if you need assistance with that, we'd be glad to help you out. But it's a great tool. All right. So next we're going to go over to, okay, we're at calendar year end. We've done our BWC and we've filled in all our vendors. And now it's time to prepare our 1099s. So under the extracts, you're going to make sure that you select 2023. The NECs are the non-employees and the MISCs are the miscellaneous, usually just royalty payments and deceased employees there. And the filing, that is, the deadline is January 31st. We are requesting that you get the tape files to us, the TAP, to our share base, and we're going to send out the link with the share bases for the 1099s, also the W-2 files and all that. We're requesting districts get that to us by January 17th, no later than January 17th. Please let us know if you cannot get those to us at that time or by that time. We need time to prepare it in order. We kind of go through files, the payroll ones as well as the 1099 ones. Our systems analyst, she puts that through a process to make sure if there's any, things that might pop out which need to be corrected. She needs time to do that for our number of districts and to prepare a tape file with all the districts in order to submit those to the IRS. So January 17th. We appreciate you making efforts to do that. So there's different types of output files. So the XML would be used if you're using a third-party printing software. Of course, the IRS format is the tape file, but you also use this for just printing out your report. So you just choose that different button at the bottom of the screen. And then there's reference copies, which are PDF. Copy 1 for state, copy 2 for the recipient. A is IRS, B is another one for recipient. And that one truncates the EIN numbers. And then copy C for the payer. So the printer sealer copies are going to contain both the 2 for the state and the B for the recipient for each vendor. And these are going to be on the 8.5 by 11, the Z-fold printer sealer copies. Those are the forms that we have upstairs, which you're going to pick up after our presentation. So on here, you would select, this is in the extract, in the periodic 1099, and then the 1099 extract. So you can do both at the same time, which is great. So you can just select both, and it's going to be, this is actually going to be 2023. This is kind of a screenshot from last year, but you actually make sure that's 2023. And then that will get your 1099 in PDF format. And then this is one of those, you leave it blank and it's, if you select nothing, it selects everything type fields. So there you go. And then you got to make sure you put in your phone number here, or you're going to get an error, and then print the 1099 report. And then that will give you your report to review. When you're ready to generate the forms, then you do the generate button instead for the forms. So you review report, make sure there's no changes needed, review it for accuracy, and then for both of them, you would do printer sealer, and that's going to get both files, the printer sealer copies, select that, and then the generate like you went over. and it's going to give you for the IRS. So you've done your forms here, and you'll print those out. And I always say, back up here with this, do a test. Do a test with maybe like one vendor. Stick in your form. Make sure it's going to make your form, print out your form the right way, and it's aligned up. We've had some issues in the past with, oh, maybe the printer alignment isn't quite right or something. We have to kind of, tinker with that a little bit. So when you first do your forms, select one vendor, print it out, make sure it's printing correctly with using your printer and the format of, like which way do we put the form in and all that type of thing. So try one, and then when you've got it, then you can do the rest. Then after you have your forms, then again, you select both, and then you'll do an IRS format at the top. Instead of printer sealer, you're going to do the IRS format, and then you're going to hit the generate button. $10.99 extracts. So IRS format, we're going to do both. It's only 2021 because of the date of the testing software. And you can actually unselect this exclude vendors with no tax ID. So if I hit the IRS format, I've got both of these selected, make sure my year's right, unselected exclude vendors. And then I'm going to put in my phone number. And then I'm going to go ahead. I've got my limits in there, and then I'm going to generate, and that will do my files. So that'll get that generated out. And that'll be in your downloads right here. And that's what gets sent. You'll send that into the share base and send it that way. Please do not email these files to us. They have social security numbers and EINs, but do fill out a help desk ticket and let us know that you have put them into ShareBase. One of those things is like you put it into ShareBase and you can't see it's there. So it's nice to know and get that confirmation. So the help desk ticket lets us do that for you. And we can double check that. And sometimes they don't have, we have things that don't have the district name, like ODJFS files and stuff. And we add your district name on there so we can check you off the list, make sure we've got that information to send for you. All right. Generate any other copies that you need. And we've got your 1099 forms once again upstairs. And we can pick up your 1099 forms and your W-2 forms. Other things, if you're not in the building today and can't pick up your forms, we're going to be sending those out to the ESCs in order for that they could be picked up. Or if you're coming in, maybe you're coming into HCC for something, for training or whatever, you could pick it up at that time. Just please let us know in advance, because we're not always, like, I'm not always here, Tanya's not always here. So we just want to make sure somebody's here that you can pick those up. All right. Then you're going to make sure your January is open. You're going to close your December and make sure your December is the current period before you close your posting period for December. And then your monthly archive and your calendar year-end reports will run. Just make sure that they're all done. So this is your file archive, and your calendar year reports will be here. And there's more. There's like your files for your 1099s will be in there as well.
If you go on spraying, yeah, because you don't want to that going in there.
Yeah, okay. Thanks, Dave. Is there a question? It's just that they were on, yeah. So here's the files that are all in there. That said, your XML and your tape files. So this would be needed if you ran them through a third-party software, which we're not doing. And that's your tape file, which is going to be sent to the IRS. So that is actually going to be in that calendar year end. I know sometimes we get things with payroll and they're like, I lost the file, I can't find it. It's usually in your downloads, but if not, when you close out your year, it'll be there. And then, we've got some other files that are going to be in your calendar year end file archive there. All right, so you are now closed for both the month and the year. Hit the right, and then make sure after you close, you go to the transaction, pending transactions. We've got some districts that run early payrolls, and you want to make sure that you post those in January. So you post those transactions, the pending ones in January. So we will be celebrating our holidays with our families December 25th, Christmas Day, and December 26th. And also January 1st and 2nd. We've got our contact numbers right there. You need to reach us. And that's a wrap. I said I was going to take 45 minutes and I'm at 44 minutes. So, yay me. Does anybody need any chocolate?
Rhonda,
Yes.
when you select the print sealer copies,
Yes.
it brings up a box with eight and then the items.
Yes.
Does that truncate the whole number? Does it leave the last four? Do we have?
I think it does the last four. I think so. I'll have to double check on that. So,
And payroll, it truncates to the last four.
the last four, yeah. So, for USAS, I'll have to double check.
We will be breaking until 10:30 for payroll, because I purposely told people payroll started at 10:30 so they didn't have to sit through USAS. So you have some time if you're hanging around.
Yeah, we're gonna use some time if you want to, if you're not staying for the payroll session, I'll be heading upstairs to help deal out the tax forms.
This is the recording. I don't think you should stop at the process. There's no 20-minute lag.
When you get back.
And start with that.
I'm sitting to, yes, once you start doing that.
Upstairs with the tax form.
Yeah.
I'm going.
Are you actually-
They need to be.
Because we're like a crowd.
It says stop, I'm not seeing the pause. I'm seeing meeting and I'm seeing stop recording.
I wonder what happened if you stopped and started it again.
Principal or start with-
Yeah, I guess it got overwrite.
Well, I just don't.
Yeah, stop trying to make. It's changed the layout a bit.
No, it was like this.
Okay.
I'll be right back.
Okay, sounds good. I think this is where I felt like we ended up getting in.
Go for it.
This also stupid. And then got everyone else on board with the fees. You can't use SCU with EFB, right?
There's.
Yay! All right, thank you all for sticking around. We're gonna get started on the lovely payroll portion that I will go over 45 minutes, and I'm sorry. But it's a 14-page document. Okay. All right, so you all should have the checklist. That's what we're gonna review today. I have made a few small minor updates. That I will send out the new checklist. I realized I need to make one more change before I send it back out, but I will send that out today or maybe Monday. Okay, first up, NC1, that is your life insurance premiums paid by the board over $50,000. If you are new to the position, or maybe you ignored me last year, if you are paying for your employees to have life insurance and that life insurance policy is over $50,000, it is subject to be taxed and you need to run it through payroll as an NC1. You need to run it through payroll as an NC1. If you wait, if you forget,
It's terrible.
and you have to process it manually, it is not fun.
It's terrible.
Anita knows.
Terrible.
And trust me, a lot of payroll people, I did it several times and I got so mad after the second time. I was like, I'm never doing this again, which is why I'm screaming it right now. Please run your NC1s through payroll. It will make your life easier.
Check Rhonda, I need that.
Some of you are very lucky and you only have 4 people that you have to run it for. Some of you, it's your entire staff. I'm sorry. You can mass load this if you would like to do that. Contact me or Rhonda, put in a help desk ticket and we can help you with it. But if you just have a few of them, I'll show you how to put that into future pay. You can do it in current pay too, but I don't ever recommend future or current pay. So hang on, brain's not working. Okay. So your NC1s are processed. You go to payroll future. You create. Pull up your person. You can put it on their job 1. This is a non-cash transaction, so it is not actually paying them. It is not going to increase your gross on your payroll. So I'm just going to say life insurance. The pay type in redesign, the new USPS, is life insurance premium, no longer NC1. And then you would just say, we have a calculator. If you don't know how to calculate it, there's actually one on our website that will help you calculate it because it's based upon their age as of this year and how much insurance they have. Also be mindful, if you had somebody that started in August, you would not want to apply that for the full 12 months. You would only want to do from August through December. They do have to pay taxes on this, so you don't want to overinflate it. So in your units, you're going to put 1 and then whatever the rate is. If it's, $230, you do need to check uncheck the applies for retirement. If you try to save it, it'll yell at you and say you can't. So uncheck that, save it.
You can uncheck it.
I unchecked it.
Well,
There we go.
the first time it said error.
Right. Yeah. So if you leave it checked, it'll error out. It won't let you do it. So this, like I said, it's a non-cash transaction. It inflates their gross on their W-2, and you will see the amounts on your pay report. But it does not increase your gross.
It shows the pay amount. I think it's the pay amount summary.
The pay amount summary, if you just look at that, it'll throw you off because it'll increase it. But when you look at the bottom, your report totals at the bottom of your pay report, it's listed separately and it does not increase the gross. Easy for me to say. There is, and it's on the checklist, detailed out how to process it manually, but nobody's going to do that. Everybody's going to run it on their next payroll. I'm sorry. Every time I have to help somebody with it, they're like, this is terrible. I'm like, I know. The NC1, when you do run it, it does not charge federal. It only charges Medicare tax. No, it charges Medicare tax and city and OSDI if they're applicable. But not all cities are applicable to the non-cash earnings. So
We have to run this for the 12/30 pay. 31 days.
or 12/15. I usually recommend the payroll before in case you forget somebody or you mess it up and you need to do it again.
Right.
You always have time.
Page. It's looking right now. That's a good call.
And
First in line.
All right, adoption assistance, if you have that, I honestly have never seen it processed, but it is, again, it's a future pay item. The only difference is your pay type is adoption assistance, but you run that through payroll just like you would an NC1. Okay, reimbursable employee expenses. I've had lots of conversations about this recently. This could be anything such as tuition reimbursement. I've seen a lot of, which this wouldn't necessarily be. I'll talk about that later. But like tuition reimbursement that you're paying out of accounts payable, if it's over $5,250, it does become a fringe benefit. And that needs to appear on their W-2 in some capacity. It used to be said that if you have tuition reimbursement over the $5,250, you would just enter it as a fringe benefit under core adjustments. I have recently discovered that by doing that, it does not increase the Medicare gross. And from my research, and I am not a tax professional, it appears that fringe benefits are subject to the Medicare tax. So from my viewpoint, you would also need to do a Medicare total gross adjustment. But I am going to defer to your treasurer and your tax advisor or attorney. So you tell me how you want it to look on the W-2 and I will absolutely help you with that. But reimbursable employee expenses are generally ran through, like, again, if you have unique situations, call us, we'll talk about it. There's so many different ones. I couldn't even begin to talk about them all here and bore half of you. But they're generally ran as an NC3. Okay. Your OSDI code, you need to have that set up on your payroll item configuration. You probably already have it set up. But just in case you had new ones this year, under core, payroll item configuration. If you go to type, you can put OSDI in here and filter. And this is what you want. So if I'm going to edit this one, you need the OSDI code at the beginning of the W-2 abbreviation. You also should have it down here in the OSDI code. If you do not have anything in this W-2 abbreviation on the W-2, it defers to whatever is in this abbreviation field. So whichever, you do need to have that OSDI code in the beginning, followed by, you know, the name, C&E. I know they have the OSDI. So those two things, OSDI code there and down here. You want to check your W-2 city abbreviations. Again, that's back under core payroll item configuration. You can filter your type for city. And then just make sure, like you can see in my awesome test file here, that it just says city tax. Well, it might be useful.
Just faking you out.
But I heard it this time. You might want to come in here to the W-2 abbreviation and put the name of the city to be helpful for your employees.
Is there a recommended number of characters? Or just full name?
I would put the whole thing, and then if it'll truncate if it can't get it all.
Okay.
Okay, also in the city, that you want the tax entity code. This one is important. If you are, so this right here, this tax entity code. The only way I know to tell you to find out what that code is to call the city. And there's a very good chance they say they don't know what you're talking about. So I don't know. I had one district last year that called and they were like, well, we don't really use that. So, you know, they just put in whatever. But it's important if you are going to try to create electronic city files. Because when we get later on in this checklist and you go to do your W-2 file for cities, it's going to ask you for this tax entity code. So make sure it's in there. Again, that's under payroll item configuration under the cities. And again, if you are not filing your cities electronically, it probably doesn't much matter because it's for the purpose of that report. All right, RETA. If you have cities that use RETA, you back in payroll item configuration, you want to make sure that down here at the very bottom, you have this RETA. Actually, I have one set up. You have this RETA section. Oh, I need to do that. This right here is their code. It's a RETA specific code, and you can get that from their website. If you just, it's under, let's see. You just go to their website and then click on tax rates. You will see this right here. Oops. This code. That's the code that is needed on the payroll item configuration screen. Where am I going? So you would put that right here. And then the description is generally just the name of the city. So I put RETA in there just to be. So make sure those two things are filled out if they are a RETA city. Also, if it is a RETA city, you need to make sure that on their payroll item on their payroll item screen that you have residence or employment filled in. So if you go to core payroll item and then payroll item again, you can come up here to select payroll item and city tax item. And then over here you have the deduction type. And so you could fill, like if you know what your cities are, like the codes, you could just do one by one. So 003, and I just want to make sure that, they either employment or residence. You could also filter this for not applicable. So right here, this is what it looks like if you don't have it's set up as employment or residence. So those are required for RETA. I recommend just putting it in for everybody anyways, but that way you don't have to worry about it because you never know when a city is going to go to RETA. Okay. HSA. If you have employees that are contributing to an HSA and you have a payroll item set up for that, you want to make sure that you have it set up. I don't know if I have one in here. That the payroll item is set up. Payroll item configuration. And then just make sure it's set up as an HSA. I may not have one in this test file. As long as you have that payroll item set up as an HSA, you're You're good there. If not, we need to make sure we get that adjusted. If your board contributed to the HSA and it was ran through accounts payable, that needs to be on their W-2. And you can do that by doing a core adjustment. I had a district that had, this would be done by a mass load. It's just, you have to have the employee number. So if you paid $500 to every employee, we would need a list of them and we do a core adjustment. So it includes it on their HSA amount. Okay. That is all your pre-closing stuff to get ready. You can start doing all of that stuff now, making sure you're good for the end of the year. Your month-end closing, you do that 11 other times a year. There's nothing special there. Your quarter closing, again, you're doing this a couple times a year. Nothing really changes there. You're probably paying more attention this time of year. But there is some notes down here for the tips if you receive the calculated gross, adjusted gross different from the total adjusted gross, what to look for if you're getting that warning. 9 times out of 10, it is a deceased employee final payment. So if you had, I always tell you, if you have a deceased employee, we always run the quarter report, get that amount and make notes so we know if that amount changes throughout the year, you've got something else going on. The other thing that I see causing a lot of problems is you withhold a payroll item and say on November 15th, but then after it's withheld, you go back in and you put a stop date of say 11/1. That causes, especially if it's an annuity item, it causes problems on your quarter report. So never do that. If you withheld it on 11/15, your stop date needs to be 11/15 or later. So those are a couple things that if you're getting that calculated gross warning to look at, and then if you still can't find it, that's what we're here for. All right. I recommend running your W-2 report at least, I want to say monthly. It says on here quarterly, but I like monthly. And here's why. How many times do you do something really weird and you're like 3 months later, you don't remember it? So if you are running it with every month and something doesn't add up, what you did is more up here, right?
Why are you guys looking at me?
Because
Both of you turn around and look at me.
you're chuckling.
It's okay.
Because you got the most tickets the other night.
I did.
Wow.
And she's probably got it again this year.
I got a certificate for the most tickets last year, and I'm proud of it.
I'm
This year,
second.
I'm getting most improved. It's
Yeah.
I
okay.
had to be second. I had to be second.
Maybe, maybe not.
Can't wait to see my calculations of most improved.
But seriously, running your W-2 report is so important because you catch these things early before it's the end of the year and you're like, oh my gosh, I have no idea.
And you can't fix it.
Sometimes you can't fix it, especially if that employee's done and gone. There's no running it back through payroll and fixing it. So just do yourself a favor and spend 15 minutes every month.
Goal for 24.
What's that
Tell
for
ya.
approved?
So you want to go ahead and start running that. When you run it, let's see, we'll go in and run one.
It's a goal, maybe. It's a goal.
So that is under reports, W-2 reports. W-2 report and submission. It defaults to report. You want to make sure you're on the current fiscal year. I'm going to change my sort options to employee name. At this point in time, I'm just running it to look for errors and warnings and looking at totals. So I'm not going to worry about this box 14 here. And I am just going to generate. So when you run this, first and foremost, I suggest Control F, look for the word error, and find all of your errors. Yeah, this is, you shouldn't have an employee duplicate SSN. That shouldn't happen in your files. But look for anything like that. And then do the same thing for warnings. Sometimes errors are a problem. You got to fix errors. Warnings, depends on what it is. They could be okay. But that's how I would recommend all of mine have warnings. When you are balancing your W-2 report to say your own spreadsheet or your quarter report, you want to make sure you are using the very last page that says report summary right here. If you try to use the page above that says employee type summary, for most of you, they're not going to match and you're going to be calling and saying, I don't balance and I don't know why. The employee type summary, if you have people that are grandfathered in and do not have Medicare being withheld, they show up at the beginning of the W-2 report and they have their own employee type summary. And then the one that's at the bottom is people that do have Medicare, but generally you aren't paging through each one to notice that. So that's why there's a difference, and that's why you need to use the report summary. And that was one of the changes that I made to this checklist to specify to use the report summary on the last page for balancing. You'll use the W-2 report, look for errors or warnings. If you have them, there's a couple of things: voided checks, error adjustments. You can run an audit report. You need to look at the core adjustments. There's a lot of different things could come into play here. Core adjustments is probably the first place I would look. But if you run in any of those warnings or errors that you're not sure of, you can give us a call. You're going to balance your W-2 report. It says that your federal total gross on the W-2 report, which is right here. I know you guys can't see that. That is so small. That it should balance with your pay reports, so your gross from the pay reports. That's not always true, and that's because of the way certain things are handled, and that's specifically right here. Dependent care benefits, fringe benefits, Medicare pickup amounts. If you have an employee that has Medicare pickup, that picked up amount gets added to the gross on the W-2 report, but it wouldn't necessarily show up on the pay reports. So I don't love number 14 here. I think it's a little misleading, but it does tell you here that it's your total gross on the W-2 report minus insurance minus Medicare pickup, and that will equal the quarter report. Okay. You want to make sure that you've paid all of your outstanding payables. So you just want to go into processing and process outstanding payables and make sure it's cleared out, which mine is not. But this should be empty after you've ran your final payroll of the year. But sometimes, you're not in the habit of maybe running quarterly ones. They kind of get lost in the mix. So just make sure you've paid all of those. Number 16, this is more of doesn't have to be done at this point in the checklist, but just a reminder to all of you that to make sure that you are completing and filing any quarter end or year end submissions, such as your federal, your state, and your cities. Your cities, you do have to do your annual reconciliation. Your federal, you need to do your 941. And then the state, I believe there is on Ohio Business Gateway, it's a fourth quarter / annual report or annual filing. Just make sure you're doing that. Again, doesn't have to be here, but just as a reminder. For your city withholdings, one way to kind of check those amounts is to take the taxable gross. And I see that says total gross. I need to change that. Can't find it. So if you were to have a city on here and take your taxable gross and multiply it by the tax rate of that city, 1%, they should balance. That's also not always true. No. Because especially if you have, some people, the city taxes 1%, but you're only withholding 0.5% because they have another city as well, and they're reciprocal. So not always true, but a lot of times it is. And so there's a note that, mobile employees and multiple tax rates can cause discrepancies there. But it is a really nice way, if you don't have any of that going on in your district, it is a really nice way to kind of verify that everybody has the correct tax rate set up. Because I've seen a lot of the tax gets set up, it's calculating the gross, but no rate was ever put in, so no amount was ever withheld. Or I see, it should have been stopped. So you took out the rate, say in June, you took out the rate, but you didn't put a stop date. And so it continues to add to the gross when really it should not have been. So there's things like that. I've seen a lot of that. So if you don't have any of these weird multiple tax rates going on, then that's a great way to check. And another thing that you can do is if you go to core, payroll item, and then payroll item, and you go to your city tax, you can search for whatever city you want to look for, and you can see your rate right here. So you can kind of ensure that everybody has, and you can sort this. It doesn't look like it's changing, but it is. Just to make sure that everybody has the correct tax rate set up in there. And you could even run a report from here if you wanted to, but just a nice little auditing tip. Okay, next up is your ODJFS report. You're all familiar with that. Under your reports, ODJFS reporting, ODJFS report. You're going to run that for the fourth quarter. We will be getting the link out to that for the share base in the near future. I did note on the checklist here, and this is true in all quarters and not just the end of the year. If you have a terminated employee that still shows up on your ODJFS report with weeks, but no wages, you need to go into their compensation screens and check for calendar stop dates, because they probably do not have one, and so it's still picking up weeks. You want to put in that stop date rather than just going to core adjustments and removing the weeks. Sure, that works and all, but it's going to continue to be a problem forever until you fix it.
Do we remove the weeks too?
If they're terminated and they didn't have any wages, they didn't work for you in that quarter, then if you just put a calendar stop date, say they left in, August, if you put August 31st, it will stop picking up the weeks. And so if you just rerun your ODJFS report, they'll come off.
Okay.
That happens when they have a calendar that has days on it, but no stop date. It just keeps picking up the weeks. And same is true if you have somebody that is being paid, but they don't have weeks, check their calendar start date, because they might be missing a calendar start date. So once you verified all of that, you're going to generate the submission file, and you're going to upload it to the share-based link that we send out to you. Okay, for those of you that have OPSI as a union, OPSI, they wait till the beginning of the year and then they ask you for all this information from the prior year. There is an OPSI report that we can load into your report manager if you don't have it. I've had districts make some changes to it because they want certain information. So we can help you with that, get that loaded and then run it and see if it's got everything you need. But usually they ask you for all the union members and what their wages were. And it used to be back in Classic, you couldn't get that once you closed the year, but. Okay. W-2 processing. Sorry, swipping water now. A lot of this is kind of, we've already talked about life insurance, fringe benefits. But before I talk about this, does anybody here or online, you're out there too, I'm probably really close to that camera. Does anybody have a vehicle allowance that you somehow put onto the W-2? Like, how are you paying that, and are you paying it through accounts payable and then transferring it to the W-2?
I think that's what we did last year.
Okay. So you're paying
I
it
think it
through
was paid through
accounts?
AP and then I put it on the W-2.
Do you remember what?
What?
No.
Did you do it as a fringe benefit?
I think so.
A fringe benefit?
Let's check our tickets.
This was a conversation that came up recently. And so I was just trying to get somebody out there in virtual land has done this, I'm sure. Speak up.
I did it years ago when I was in corporate. And that's how I did it, was a fringe benefit, and you had to figure out the mileage that they did. And
So you just did a fringe benefit, but did it only affect their state and federal gross?
I don't remember because it was,
Did it show up in a specific box? Box 12, box 14?
I don't remember. It was the early 2000s. It was like 20 years ago.
Well, if anybody out there and doesn't want to, if you've done that, I would love, email me. If you don't want to speak up, that's fine. If you would email me and tell me what your process was, I would love to hear it. Trying to gather information. Okay. So this number 22 is kind of what we talked about earlier, making sure that you're doing all of your life insurance and stuff. Dependent care. If you have employees that have that are paying into a dependent care account, again, if you already have your payroll items set up as dependent care, so for payroll item configuration, and I probably don't have one. I do. Dependent care, as long as you have it set up like that and you're using that deduction code, you're fine. If not, then there are the steps on how to enter it manually. Third-party sick pay, this is becoming more and more common. And this is another one of those, so there's a lot of conversation that needs to happen. You normally get something from the third-party company and tells you the amount, and then it's a matter of, is it taxable, is it not? And that determines how it gets put onto the W-2. We have a whole third-party sick pay guide that we can send you. But the first thing is to find out, is it taxable or not? And every year I gotta refamiliarize myself with it.
Are you looking at me again?
I'm looking at you.
Or are you looking past me?
I'm looking at you.
You
So when you
definitely
say
have
that, I'm sorry they keep coming around looking at us.
She said to move, and he just like, go back over there. Bringing too much attention.
Tanya,
Oh,
if you
goodness.
receive one of these notices from your TPA after the fact, do you know we have to redo? Had anybody have that situation?
Not that I recall. I'm gonna say legal counsel. Cause I just don't, I don't know and what the legal,
Okay, I didn't know if you had that situation. I felt
I have not, that I can think of. Trying to think. We just don't have very many people that even have the third party sick pay. It just isn't super common. So yeah, I don't know. But if anybody has had that happen and you have experience, email me. Okay, fringe benefits. The steps on here, and I didn't realize this, I guess. The steps on here for fringe benefits is to strictly do a core adjustment for fringe benefits. And that will increase the federal and state gross on the W-2. Now, this is what I was talking about earlier. There's a gray area that I'm not super comfortable with, saying, oh, this is the correct way to do it, and this is not the correct way. If you do enough research, it will tell you that fringe benefits are typically subject to Medicare tax. And if you feel that way, and your treasurer and your legal counsel says, yes, they've got to pay Medicare tax on it. There's actually an additional step, 2 additional steps to add, to increase the Medicare gross by the same amount. And then you have to, if that person is still being paid, you would go in and do an error adjustment for the 1.45% for employee on their Medicare payroll item. If they are not being paid any longer, then it would be a core adjustment to increase that amount, and then you've got to pay it, and then it's a lot. So if you have fringe benefits and you feel like it should be subject to Medicare tax, let us know. We'll walk through it. Another district that I work with, after a lot of conversation, they decided to process it as an NC3, which does not show up as a fringe benefit, but from everything we've read, showing it as a fringe benefit on the W-2 is optional, depending on what it is. And so we ran it as an NC3, and so the employee got taxed on it at that time, and yeah. So there's just a lot of ins and outs of that if you have fringe benefits you want to post, call me. Let's talk about it. Talk to your tax advisor. Taxable benefits, a non-cash taxable benefit. There's a lot of examples here. This link on here is incorrect. I need to fix it. That's if you ran it, well, it depends. Some of it you've ran it through accounts payable and you want to show up on the W-2. Sorry, there's just a lot of different scenarios and you all don't have forever. Employer health coverage costs. As long as on your payroll item configuration, you have, and I probably should have looked for one of these and I didn't. Okay, so on your payroll item configuration, as long as your health insurance has this box right here checked, this employer health coverage, you're good. That will do what it needs to do on the W-2 file. If you have employees that maybe were on a leave of absence and they paid the district directly for their portion of insurance for any portion of time, that should get added to their W-2. And the steps are on there. You go to core adjustments, create, employee name, the type is health insurance. And that will increase their health insurance amount on the W-2 only. And it doesn't override the amount. So if they paid you directly $500, the amount is $500 and it adds to, you wouldn't, like, it's not an override. If you have vehicle leases, that is done through a core adjustment. And the type is a vehicle lease. All right, so 30 is creating your W-2 report. We've kind of already talked about that. But okay, so when you are creating your W-2 report and you're getting ready to the reports, W-2 reports, report and submission. So you're going to generate your report. You're one final time. You're going to make sure it's all good. Oh, it was under there too. Okay. If you want to set it up just like you're going to when you're going to actually create your W-2s, you're going to, if you want to include fringe benefits, and again, this is up to you, and then you've got to tell it which fringe benefits you want to show up in box 14. It will only show the first 3, but you can put as many as you want in here. So, you know, if you got 607, and I'm going to add that, and 608. So you add that one. So these are all the fringe benefits that I want to show up. So a lot of people will do their union dues in this box because that's a question that they get asked. So it's easier just to show it as a fringe benefit. So they have it right there in front of them. So you can add as many as you want here. It will only show the first 3 for any employee. Okay, so if the employee has all 5 of them, it's only showing the first 3. So be particular on the order that you put these in. Once you have this set up, you can go up here to this save and recall, and you can save it. So I'm going to say fringe benefits 2, because I already have one in here. Spell it right. You tab over, and then this save button highlights. Save that. Now you can use this every year, and you don't have to think, well, what did I do last year? And it's going to come in really handy here in a few steps. So if I leave here, and I come, well, just go somewhere else first. So if I come back in there, it automatically defaults to, the most recent. I'm going to say, nope, I want my fringe benefits too. And it goes ahead and it checks the box and it gives me my payroll items. I highly, highly recommend this because you're going to do a lot of versions of the W-2s, and having all of this set up one time and saving it, same thing like the sort options. You want to make sure that your sort option is how you want it, because you're going to run for various times, and you don't want to change any of that. But we'll talk about that. So that's a little trick. So you're going to generate it one final time. You're going to make sure it's good, and then you're going to actually create your submission file. So you just change this little bubble to submission. And then you verify everything is correct. It's coming from your organization screen. So it should be correct, but if it's not, if you've moved, You can change that under core organization, and you can update your address or whatever need be. Okay, so submission, make sure everything's right. You got to put in your name. Oops. I'm not giving myself a
728.
Sorry, I love y'all, but no thanks. And then the email. And then you're going to create or generate the SSA W-2 submission file. You're going to generate that, and that is the file that gets uploaded to ShareBase when we send that out. If you could do us a favor when you save it to, your files or whatever, if you could put your district name at the beginning of it, it helps us a ton because everybody's uploading to the same file. And that way we don't have to open it to find out who it
For
is.
box 14, if there's more than 3, would it kick to another page of the W-2? Well, not.
I don't think so.
No, but you can list multiple ones. You don't have to put only 3 in the selection.
But you
Right.
think the
I'm
same
saying
time
if
was-
it's multiple ones, does it kick to another page?
Yeah, I think it only does the first 3.
Right,
Yeah,
and
it comes
it only
first.
kicks out another page is if you have multiple cities that show up at the bottom.
Okay.
Okay, so that was step 32. Oh, also, we want all files uploaded to ShareBase by January 17th, please. We do a lot of testing with it before we can actually file it, and sometimes we have errors that kick out that we have to have the file regenerated. So if you could have it to us by the 17th, if something drastic happens and you can't, please let us know as soon as possible.
And we'll be sending out the ShareBase contact info probably today. Re-upload the links.
Okay, so next up, so that is your federal one. To do your state one, you're still under the W-2 report and submission, but I'm going to go over here to W-2 state options. Ohio's defaulted. Again, all of this information defaults in except for all of this jazz down here. And then you're going to generate your submission file. Again, save it somewhere, put your name at the beginning of it, upload it to ShareBase. Okay. At this point in time, maybe you all remember this, or maybe you all pushed it out of your head. If you need to file Kentucky, Indiana, Rita, or any cities electronically, and only if you're doing those electronically. If you are doing them by paper, you can skip this little box right here. You would, so again, I'm a district, I need to file Rita electronically because I have 300 people. Before I can generate the rest of my files, I need to go to System Configuration, W-2 Configuration, and I have to check this box that says District will submit own W-2 files. And I have to make sure all of this information is filled in, including, and most importantly, the submitter EIN and the submitter user ID. That submitter user ID is your BSO account. Most of you set it up last year, so it's probably already in there. There is some communication that came out earlier this month about all of the stuff you have to go through to make sure you can log in. You don't ever actually have to log in. It's just this silly little thing that has to be on the electronic file. So, if you didn't go through all those steps, but you still have your submitter user ID in there, it's fine. Just leave it, if you want to be able to log in. The only reason you would need to be able to log in, because we still file your W-2s for you. So you don't have to use it for that purposes. But if you ever wanted to be able to run the Social Security verification, then you need to be able to log in. So I need an electronic file. I've come in here and I've filled in all of this information. It was already in there. I just had to, check this box that says district will submit own W-2s. While I'm in here, I'm going to go ahead and talk about this. It's listed later on in the checklist, but you now have the option to truncate the Social Security number on the paper W-2s. Since maybe you're not mailing them, but you're probably mailing some because you have subs and terminated people. If you do not want their full social to show up on the printed W-2, you can come in here and check this box to only include the last 4 digits of their social.
Do you find that a lot of people do that now, or like their employees would prefer that they do?
It's a brand new option. They just released it here recently. I think given some of the stuff that we've experienced and, I think it's a great idea to truncate that. That way less information that's out there. Because it's usually pretty obvious that it's a W-2.
Right.
Yeah, the envelope size and all that.
Yeah.
And even though you're, a lot of your employees, you're probably sending to your billions or whatever. I know I always had a stack this big of ones I had to mail. So I think I would probably recommend. But so you can do that while you're in it. Well, all right, I'm gonna get an error because I haven't really filling all that in. Okay, so again, this is only if you file Kentucky, Indiana, Rita, or cities electronically. If you do paper for all of them or you don't have any of them, you can ignore that. You do not have to go in and check that box. So then you're going to go in and create, if you need to, your other states. So again, that is reports, W-2 reports, report and submission, and then you've got your state options, and you've got probably the most Indiana and Kentucky. So whichever one you need. We do have on the checklist some information about both Kentucky and Indiana. Indiana is unique in that if you have Indiana, they also have to have a city tax record or a city tax payroll item for the county. And you have to have some codes in the payroll item code 1 field. This isn't super common, so I'm not going to review this. I think I know of one district that has Indiana. That could have changed since last year, but the W-2, or I'm sorry, the Rita submission is under the W-2 report options. Wow, come on.
Cool. And is Jill still doing the CDs?
Yes,
As
if need be.
districts need them.
Yeah, and that's listed down lower. Okay, so we need Rita, so we got to click on submission, fill in all of our information, and then we want the generate Rita W-2 submission. I don't believe we have any CCA. That is North
Cleveland.
So you generate that. Again, save it with your name at the beginning. It'll be one of the upload files. Am I wrong about that? Do we need Rita? Or I don't think we need Rita anymore. I have to double check. Rita, you may not have to upload to us. That one may be one that you can load directly to Rita's website.
I think you do it directly to their website.
I think so too. So I don't think Rita has to be uploaded to us, just the states and the cities. And the cities are because generally you need that on a CD, and Jill does that. Okay. If you need a city submission file, so like City of Cincinnati, if you have more than 100 employees, they have to be electronic. So you would go to your W-2 city options, fill in all of your information. And this is where that tax entity code I talked about earlier comes into play. This has to come from your payroll item configuration, and it is case sensitive. So if in the configuration you have Cincy all lowercase and you put Cincy all uppercase here, it will not pull. So again, that is coming from core payroll item configuration. And it's on the city and it's this tax entity code. So you could copy that or whatever. I have asked them to make this a drop-down box because it annoys me. I think it's going to come at some point, but it's not a priority right now. I just think it would be, because it's so case sensitive, I think it would be easier if you could just be like, okay, this is what I want. So you would put in city options, fill in all this, and I'm going to say 9988, and then these two boxes right here, we have some notes on those two check boxes. The include amounts for all cities, you always want to have that checked. The include city name should be checked, as far as we know, for Fairfield, and it should not be checked for Cincinnati, Forest Park, Norwood, Madeira, Deer Park, or Mason. That was last I heard. So that's in this red right here. So if you are not filing your cities electronically, well, we'll get to that. There's a report that you can run. We'll get to that in a minute. So at this point, you've ran all of your states, you ran all of your cities, you ran your RETA. You would want to go back. If you did this, you would want to go back to your payroll item configuration and you want to uncheck, system configuration and then W-2 configuration. And you would uncheck this district will submit own W-2s. That way you're ready for next year, because you can't have that checked when you're running your actual W-2 files. And again, the next step on here is that truncate your SSN, which we talked about. Okay, so that's all of your submission files. Next up is creating your actual W-2 print file. Those are now done through USPS. It's not something that we have to create for you any longer. So that is done under, this is where it gets confusing because there's so many options. It's under reports, W-2 reports, and this time you want mailable forms, which makes sense. You're going to mail them, right? Did I click it? Did it glitch on me? Okay.
There it is.
So again, everything pre-populates for you. This is where, remember earlier I said, hey, do this save and recall. Hey, look, right here. I'm going to check that and boom, it pops in here for me. And this is not the last time you're going to use it. So that save and recall in the W-2 report is, I didn't know that it translated in between them. I found that I was excited. It's a little thing. So you fill all of this in. And you can do this show building department code if you are going to send them out to your buildings. It shows on the front next to their name and address. So that way you could sort it. This is where this sort option comes into play. If you wanted to sort it by building and then employee name, so that way they were all together if you were sending them to the buildings. I won't tell you what I did. It took me 3 hours, but so you could do that. But it is important to remember, whatever you set up this, like in the first place, you need to keep it consistent. So your submission file, your mailable forms, later on we're going to talk about employer copies. If you use kiosk, you want to keep it the same for every single one because there's a control number on the W-2s. And if you change any of those, especially the sort options, it throws it off. I don't know how important that control number is. I don't work at the IRS, but just in case it's important, keep it the same. So that's why I like the save and recall. So you don't really have to think about, oh, what did I do? You just set it up how you want it and then just go with it. So once you have this ready, these are your mailable forms. You're going to come down here. You don't have to select the pay groups. It's just going to select everybody. And you are going to generate your mailable forms. Now, when you do this, you get this box that says the job is started. So if I scroll up here, I can see that it is in the background, it's creating this print job for me. And now it's completed. So where do those go? Those are under reports, W-2 reports. And it's this W-2 form output files. Here it is. Here's the report, and it's called a mailable. I do believe you can change the name of that. So from here, I can download this. And this is what I'm going at. When I open it, it's just one big file, and it's everybody on it. So these are my W-2s. When you go to print these, you're going to start by printing just page 1. And you're going to test it out and make sure it prints correctly before you print 500 and you waste all your paper because it printed backwards.
We do have extra forms though.
A few, not 4.
Not 500, but well, maybe 500.
We might have 500, but
yeah.
So just test it out, print just the one, make sure you've got everything lined up. I don't recall last year there being any issues with alignments, so we should be good. Once you have So once you've printed those, and I don't know if this is the next step. I'm sorry, I'm jumping. Okay, it is. So once you've printed them, you want to click this box. Now this will stay out here until you move it. All right, so this is in the form output files. This little box guy right here will send it to your file archive, and that way you can access it at any point in time. And this output files, it only houses so many. So if you ran this, then you looked at it and you're like, oh man, I got a problem here. And you go and fix something, just delete it out of here. Of course, if you fix something, you gotta redo all your tape files too, but that's another topic. So you can delete it if you need to run a second one, or maybe you sorted it wrong. So you could delete it, but once it's your final one, you can just click this little box. It'll go to your file archive. I have no idea if it'll work in this test file. And once you send it there, it tells you it's in your calendar year reports, and it's no longer in here. So now if I need it for any reason, it's under utilities, file archive, what year am I in? 2023 calendar year reports. And there it is. So I could download that again if I needed to. So again, those are employee copies to mail to them. All right, step 40. This is a new one that they added to the checklist this year, and it makes sense. You can create like an employer copy. I don't know that anybody's printing employer copies. I can tell you I never sat there and printed off a whole copy. Back then we had it in on base. Now they're housed in the system. So you could always go back to that print file and print another one if somebody loses it. But if you wanted to do the employer copies, because the employer copies will create it as an 8.5 by 11 versus the
8.5 by 14.
Yeah. So that is under reports, and reports, report and submission, and you're doing forms. This keeps, that's not.
Yeah, I noticed that.
It's like
It's like, that's not the right page.
It's like half the right page and half not. It's like, stay out of here. Let me go somewhere else first.
Yeah. It's like you have to hit the refresh button on some things. Yeah.
It's still taking me there. Am I crazy?
Ticket to SAT.
Or am I in the right spot? And I'm just like, normally it defaults to your report and not forms. Now it's gotta think.
That's
Now
a
I've really
report.
got it. It really
Yeah.
doesn't know what to do now.
Yeah, the payment's going.
Anyways, it's under reports, W-2 reports, report and submission, and you want to make sure the output type is forms. And again, it's the same thing that we've already done 16 other times. Use your little save and recall, make sure it's in the same sort options and you got the same box 14 options, and then you would generate them. Is it working now? Yep, I've just really even it's over it. Even the system's over this. I don't want to do it. Well, it's similar in the fact that you generate the forms, and then it'll give you a little box and says that they're creating. It generates, and then it goes to the form output files. So same thing. If you want to print them, you could print them, or you could just use that little archive box to send them out to the archive. If you use kiosk and you want your employees to be able to access their W-2s via kiosk, there's a separate, again, see, this is why I said that save and recall could come in handy. So again, this is under, never gonna let me do what I need to do. It is the W-2 archive individual forms. Oh, hey, it took me there. Oh, this one doesn't have a save and recall.
Yeah. SSDT suggestion.
Yeah. So you would need to set this one up. This one, use extra caution to make sure that you're getting the correct sort options that you did originally. Your box 14, the same options there. You can schedule this whenever you want. So if you are running this, I don't know, December 29th, but you're like, I don't really want them to have access to the W-2s until I have mailed them their original. You could schedule this in the future. So you could, you can change it right here. So say, I'm going to schedule this to be available on January 22nd, because by then they should have them, and schedule the job, and then it'll be available for them to pull from the kiosk. Okay, for those of you that, or for everybody, if you were here 2 years ago, we used to give duck reports that had all your cities and states and the information necessary for your reconciliations. We created a report that you could pull out of redesign. Most of you probably have it. So it should be in your report manager. I have no idea if it's in here. It's probably not. Nope. But it should be called something to the effect of, what should I call it?
CYE.
CYE, state and local wage report. Maybe it just says state and local wage report. Maybe it says duck report. So I think that's kind of the problem. Not everything's consistent. If you don't have it or you're like, I'm not sure, let us know. We can upload it for you. This way, say some. Okay. So this is a great report that will give you the employee. Oh, I guess I could run it real fast. It'll give you their name, their address, all the information that's required for like a listing to send to your cities. I'll just import it real fast and so that you guys can see it. The only, do I pass it?
Oh, yay, it's under CYE. I think.
Yeah.
There it is.
All right, so when you generate this, you don't have to do any options. It's already set up to run for cities and states and OSDI, I believe. You have to have December current when you run this report. If you try to run this in January, you're not going to get the information that you need. So just make sure December is current. So this is what it looks like. This is my 003 city. It's got their name, their social, their address, their year-to-date gross, their applicable gross, and their withholding. And then I believe it has a total at the bottom. There we go. So then I got a total per city. So hopefully that balances with all of your records. This is where we find issues where, hey, this person has wages, but they don't have any withholdings. Well, that's probably because they don't have a rate. So nothing was withheld. So that is the state and local wage report. You're going to want to run that. You can use that for balancing. You can also use that when you're doing your city reconciliations. All right. Once all that's done, let us know if you have all of your files submitted. We like to go in and check to make sure we have everything, that we have the correct file. Please do not email us any files. There's too many social security numbers on it. You upload it to ShareBase. You'll let us know. Again, we would like those uploaded to us by January 17th. If you need an electronic submission file for a city or like a CD, put in a separate ticket for that because that goes to Jill and she'll create those. Just know that she prioritizes. She's got to get ODJFS filed. She's got to get Ohio filed and federal. Cities are kind of last on her list because generally those are not due till the end of February. So just be patient with her. It might be closer to the end of January before she actually gets you what you need, but she will get it. So just put in a separate ticket. You're going to want to close December as you normally would. Again, you don't want to stretch that out and not close it until February because it does generate some report bundles to be generated. And they don't always generate correctly if you're closing them 3 months later. Your leave balance report will be wrong, but they're working on that. That's coming. Okay, again, we submit your federal and Ohio W-2s. You do not have to do that. HCC will do that for you. You are responsible for Kentucky, Indiana, Rita, and any cities. We are out of the office January 25th and 26th and January 1st and 2nd. I'm sure all of you are as well. During this time, it is best to submit help desk tickets as we get extremely busy. So that is the quickest way to get a response from any of us. And thanks for listening to me for an hour and a half. I'm sorry. Questions?
The phone number for Sandra is wrong. It's got 513 instead of 614.
Oh,
because I don't have her.
that is the finance line. Yeah.
I will update that. Thank you.
Yeah.
You can put my cell phone on there. That's fine.
Yeah.
That's the only phone I have. So
Yeah, I'll update it. All right. Any questions out there? Was there anything in the chat that I needed to
chocolate anyway.
All right, thank you, everybody. Thank you. And if you need your W-2s and 1099s, we can go upstairs.
We'll give them upstairs so you can get those.
You want to stop the
I
recording?
don't know if Nancy got ours or not
You
yet.
have a question?
Yeah. Looks like we have the state and local wage report, but it says that Tracy created it. You know,